The rain hit me like it knew my name. Not a gentle drizzle, no, this was a downpour, hard and unrelenting, the kind that soaks you through to your bones and reminds you of every choice that led here. Before we continue, drop your city and time in the comments, and thanks for listening to my story. Now back to the story. I was sitting outside a closed diner on Main Street in downtown Los Angeles, knees pulled to my chest, jacket useless against the wet. My hair stuck to my face, my shoes squelched with each shift of weight, and somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared like the world was mocking me. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. Not because I was brave, but because I had stopped caring. This was my life now. Survival didn't include hope. Then I saw him. The car slowed in front of me, black sedan, tinted windows, the kind of car that announces money before the driver even opens the door. He stepped out, shaking off rain that couldn't touch him the way it touched me. He didn't look down at me like I was a problem to fix. He just looked. Really looked. I should have looked away, but something in his eyes stopped me. It wasn't pity. It wasn't judgment. It was curiosity and caution mixed with a softness I hadn't seen in years. "Hey," he said, voice low but clear over the rain. "You don't have to sit out here." I stared at him. I wanted to scoff, to tell him the street had nothing to offer but cold concrete and disappointment. But something about the way he said it made me hesitate. "Rain doesn't bother me anymore," I muttered, my voice small, almost fragile. I didn't know why I said it. Maybe because I had rehearsed the line for years, preparing anyone who tried to help for the truth. I was untouchable, broken, invisible. He crouched slightly, keeping the distance between us. Not too close, not too far. I noticed the smell of cedar and something clean, faint and unfamiliar. Comfort, I realized. Something I hadn't known existed in a long time. He said his name, but not the polished, important version that would appear in headlines. Just his name, casual and unassuming. I almost didn't give him mine. Names are dangerous when they can be taken away at any moment. But for some reason, I whispered it anyway. He offered me food. I shook my head. Money. I looked away. Then he did something I wasn't ready for. He said I could come home with him. I froze. There was no catch, no papers to sign, no speech about charity or rules, just an open door. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "Just don't stay here tonight." I studied him. Survival had taught me to see every angle, every lie, every invisible hand ready to push me off a ledge. But I didn't see a trick. I saw possibility. So I nodded, slowly, carefully, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I let myself be led somewhere warm. The car smelled like leather and cedar. I sat stiff, hands folded, eyes glued to the wet streets as the city blurred past. I felt like I was moving through someone else's life, a world that wasn't built for someone like me. And maybe it wasn't, but it was safe. His house was on a hill overlooking Los Angeles. Glass walls, clean lines, quiet that pressed gently against my ears. I stopped at the doorway, afraid my body wouldn't know how to enter a place like this. "This isn't real," I whispered. "It is," he said, and for once I wanted to believe. He gave me a shower, clean clothes, space. No judgment, no speeches, just a door I could lock, and I did. I cried in that bathroom, tears running hot and fast, letting the grief and exhaustion of years wash away. When I emerged, wrapped in borrowed comfort, I saw him waiting, not with questions, not with expectations, just presence, and that simple act felt like the first home I'd ever known. We ate takeout across a kitchen island. I was tense. Old instincts die hard. I expected him to ask me to leave, to explain, to point out my flaws. He didn't. He just listened as I started talking. I didn't tell the whole story. No one could handle that in one sitting. But pieces. Foster homes, wrong people, bad choices, nights on the street that taught me more about fear than I wanted to know. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He just listened, like he was trying to memorize the sound of someone finally being honest. Days became weeks. I stayed. I didn't even think to ask for permission anymore. I started waking up to sunlight rather than sirens. I started breathing without fear, laughing without apology. He never pressured me, never assumed I needed fixing. He let me rediscover myself slowly, one careful step at a time. I remember one morning on the balcony with a sketch pad I hadn't drawn in years. My hands remembered shapes I'd buried under survival. He joined me silently, leaning on the railing, watching the city stretch below us. "I never thought I'd see this," he said softly. "See what?" I asked, not meeting his eyes. All of this. Laughing, breathing, existing without fear." I shrugged, hiding a smile. "I'm not used to it either." Weeks later, he took me to the coast. Just us, the ocean, and sand between our toes. My heart had forgotten how to race like this, how to feel unguarded. Fingers brushed, fingers entwined. And suddenly, I realized this wasn't about survival anymore. It was about choosing someone. We went out again, small dinners in quiet restaurants where no one noticed us. I kept waiting for the moment I'd feel out of place, for the streets to seep back in. It never did. I realized I was finally allowed to exist fully. Love crept in like water through cracks, gentle, insistent. A brush of hands, a lingering glance, laughter shared over old movies. He noticed everything, the small tics I thought I hid, the way I flinched, the way I laughed too loud, the way I tried not to take up space. And slowly, I started noticing him, not as my savior, but as someone I wanted to exist alongside. Then came the night that changed everything. Jazz was playing softly. I was wrapped in one of his hoodies. He looked at me like he was weighing the world, like he held a storm in his chest. I think I'm in love with you," he said. My chest hitched. Charity, rescue, obligation. None of it mattered anymore. It was just truth. I whispered, "Me too." And everything broke open. Not gently, fierce, terrifying, beautiful. We kissed, not careful, not polite. Like two people who had been surviving all their lives were finally allowed to stop. The next days were a blur, laughter, quiet mornings, stolen kisses, long talks. I stopped thinking about the streets. I stopped counting days of survival. I started living. But love is never just easy. His world demanded perfection. My past whispered I wasn't worthy. Arguments flared. Insecurities bubbled. Fears collided. But each time, we returned. Because for the first time, I was seen. And he finally let someone see him, raw and unmasked. I found myself thinking about that first night in the rain, about the girl who had sat alone and cold, and realizing she was still there, but transformed, stronger, alive, loved. And for the first time in my life, I realized that one small act, one choice to trust, can change everything. The morning after that confession, I woke up to sunlight spilling across the bedroom floor. I blinked, half expecting it to vanish if I moved too fast. For a moment, I felt guilty for letting comfort exist. Survival had trained me to believe comfort was a trap. But then I felt the weight of him sleeping beside me, steady and warm, and the guilt dissolved into something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Safety. We didn't talk immediately. We didn't need to. Sometimes silence can be louder than words, full of permission, full of trust. I let myself stretch, feel the air against my skin, and notice the little things, the hum of the city below, the faint smell of cedar lingering from last night, the way the morning light caught his eyelashes. After coffee and breakfast, him making eggs, me watching, quietly amazed that someone cared enough to feed me without ceremony, I started thinking about my life outside these walls. The streets weren't gone, they were just memories, shadows I could see without fear now. I realized that this man hadn't just given me a home, he'd given me permission to exist, to take up space, to be seen, and that was terrifying. Weeks passed. Life felt normal in the strangest, most foreign way. I woke up, showered, wore clean clothes, and ate without counting bites. I started drawing again, my sketch pad never far from my side. Each line I drew felt like reclaiming pieces of myself I thought had been lost forever. He never asked me why I drew. He didn't ask me to explain my past. He just noticed. And I noticed him noticing, and slowly it became a rhythm. He cared, I trusted. The city outside moved like it hadn't noticed we existed, and inside these walls, we built something fragile and real. One night, I watched him in the living room. He was reading, the city lights reflecting off the glass behind him. I couldn't stop staring. I realized I didn't just feel safe around him. I wanted him in my world, in every corner, in every quiet moment. The thought scared me more than sleeping on the street ever did. Love had never been safe. Love had never been predictable. And yet, here I was. Then came the night that really tested everything. We had gone out to a quiet Italian place in Silver Lake, the kind of place that smelled like garlic and simmering sauces, where the waiter smiled like he'd seen every love story and believed in them all anyway. I wore a simple dress, tried not to fidget with my hair, tried not to think about how unworthy I felt. We laughed over pasta, talked about dreams we had buried long ago, and for a few hours, the city, the streets, the past didn't exist. Back at his place, we sat on the balcony. Rain had returned, soft this time, like a lullaby. I rested my head on his shoulder, finally feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. I wanted to tell him everything, the way I'd always hidden from the world, the way I'd learned to disappear, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I let him hold me, and for once, silence was enough. Days turned into weeks. I began noticing the small, intimate ways love appeared. How he left coffee for me exactly the way I liked it. How he remembered the smallest details about my favorite music. How he smiled at me across the kitchen as if he couldn't believe I existed in his life. And I realized I didn't just care about his actions. I cared about him. Every thought, every fear, every quiet moment he shared. But love is never just beautiful. It is dangerous. It carries risk. And for the first time, I had to confront mine. One afternoon, a call came from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Someone from my past. Threats, old mistakes, people who wanted to remind me that my life had once been invisible, dangerous. Fear crawled into my chest. I froze, paralyzed, until his hand found mine. He didn't ask questions. He didn't yell. He just squeezed, steady, grounding. And I realized I had someone I could face the storms with. The tension stayed with us for days. I felt panic creeping in, distrust, memories of running, hiding. And yet, he stayed, always. One night, I cried into his chest. I told him the things I'd never told anyone, the nights alone, the hunger, the fear, the loneliness. And he listened, really listened. "No one else has to see that," he said softly, "but I do, and I'm not going anywhere." The next weeks were an intricate dance. I learned to trust fully, to accept love without bargaining, and he learned to see me as more than someone to protect. We became partners in ways I hadn't known possible. We cooked together, laughed together, argued quietly, and kissed wildly. Each moment was new, uncharted territory. Every day was a small victory over the ghosts of the past. Then came the evening that changed everything again. He led me to a small rooftop, far above the city. Lights stretched endlessly below us, and the air was soft and fragrant from rain. He held my hands, looked into my eyes, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. "I want us," he said. "Not just this, not just safe. I want everything with you." Tears ran down my cheeks. I nodded, unable to speak. The wordless agreement felt louder than any vow. We kissed there, under the night sky, the city humming beneath us, knowing that the choice we had made, trusting each other, was worth everything. Life wasn't perfect. His world was demanding. My past still whispered doubts. But every day, I realized that we had rewritten the rules together. The girl who once sat in the rain, invisible, desperate, and alone, had become someone who could laugh freely, love openly, and exist without apology. I remember walking through the city one evening, hands in his, watching neon signs flicker and cars rush past, and realizing something profound. The streets that had once defined me no longer owned me. I owned myself. I owned this love. I owned this life. Love had not been easy. Love had required bravery, trust, and surrender. But I had discovered something extraordinary. When someone truly sees you, when someone truly chooses you, the impossible becomes real. And that night, standing beside him, breathing in the city, listening to the rain fall gently on rooftops, I understood that life had finally begun. I had been invisible once, forgotten, broken. Now I was alive. I was loved. I was seen. And every time I look at him, every time he smiles or laughs or simply exists beside me, I know. Sometimes, one small act of courage, one choice to trust, can change everything. And for me, it did. The rain still falls in Los Angeles. It always will. But now it feels like a song, and I dance in it, freely, openly, alive.